Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining us as we spend this next hour together. And as always, I do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family. My opening observation focuses on perseverance. What is it? Well, perseverance is not giving up. It is persistence and tenacity. The effort to do something and keep doing it, seeing it through to the very end, even if it's hard. It can be called grit. And true grit is certainly what we're seeing happening throughout our society today, as we've seen Black Lives Matter emerge more than just being a hashtag, but a movement. And it's filled with blacks, whites, browns, red, yellow, all God's children coming together to say enough is enough. We must stand together as one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. We must find a way to have racial equality, and we will not give up. It reminds me of that old James Cleveland song, I don't feel no ways tired. Nobody told me the road would be easy, but I don't believe God brought me this far to leave me. And so they persevere. Ida B. Wells Barnett was a prominent journalist, activist, and researcher in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. She did not give up her quest to fight against sexism, racism, and violence. In fact, she went so far as to state this, and I quote, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." And that is exactly, as journalists, what we do here on this show and on this Black News channel. We raise the light through showing illuminated truth, and we persevere. And those are my opening observations. Well, a week ago, I had the pleasure of going to the White House to interview various people of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And it included Dr. Deborah Birx, as well as the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams. And tonight we're going to hear from the SBA Administrator, Jovita Carranza, talking about what's happening in terms of Small Business Administration loans to so many people. And I asked her, what can we do to make sure that African Americans are getting their fair share? Now, how do you get this SBA program and the money into the hands of Black and Brown-owned businesses, because some of them are not getting their fair share?
Well, let me share the experiences I've had visiting an African American electrical engineering firm. And I was very encouraged that he applied for two loans, the EIDL COVID loan and the PPP program. And he leveraged both to be able to improve his credit score, be able to bring back his employees, consider hiring new because of the type of state and federal contracting that they have as potential work. And now he has a good credit score and he has more banks calling on him. So for some of the minorities who have been able to apply these funds appropriately, smartly, they're moving forward. For other small businesses that have been hit hard, like I visited a Hispanic restaurant. They have 3 restaurants. The son owns it. I was speaking with the mother, and she had tears in her eyes because she thought and considered that the PPP was a lifeline for their small taqueria. As you know, they sell tacos, which, by the way, I ate one. But to be in their company and listen to them how all communities, all zip codes were enabled by PPP is very encouraging. It's great news to bring back to DC when I'm out traveling to, like, for instance, Dallas or Chicago.
And what do you say to those who are saying that they're in the process of getting the loans but can't get to the system because the system seems to be overwhelmed with the number of loans that are in place?
When we have half of the loans, and that is about 5 million loans at this point, half of the million loans going to our underserved market, and you have a focus in, and the administration has a focus on the minority, women-owned, veterans as well. And knowing that those numbers are growing as we speak. Why? Because we have been enabling community banks, credit unions, fintech companies, all lending communities or sectors that our small businesses have access to for funding. In addition to the minority and then, of course, the lending community, it's also the fact that 70% of our loans, and the data is out, as you understand, 70% of those loans represent loans less than $100,000. And that's the smallest of smallest. We have lenders that have provided loans as low as $250. So I am very much encouraged that no small business was left behind. What I do encourage small businesses to do now is to realize that there's over $125 billion available. And we remain adding new lenders, CDFIs, MDIs, more credit unions want to provide funding for these small businesses, the sole proprietors, the independent contractors. So we're enabling much more funding, much more smartly. And you mentioned something about the 200 waiting on the particular lending. Nothing was perfect, but for every adjustment that we've made, it's improved the service to all of our borrowers and our lenders. And we're so responsive to all of their input. And so I'm really pleased that now the turnaround time is much more expedient.
We'll be back with more of the program after this. Welcome back to the program. I'm delighted to introduce to you an incredible young woman who's doing so many great things in the field of testing for COVID-19, and she's a very important link to the White House Coronavirus Task Force. She works directly with them. As you know, after watching this show, we've had the Surgeon General, as well as Dr. Deborah Birx on the program. Of course, she's the coordinator of the Coronavirus Task Force. But let me introduce to you Colleen J. Payne-Neighbors. She's based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She is a serial entrepreneur. I want you to understand that, because there's a reason why I need you to understand that, and she'll reveal that during the course of this conversation. She has founded 7 successful businesses, and she has set the bar for excellence as the CEO and founder of MCI Diagnostic Center. She is the author of the book, I Did It My Way, and it worked. It's really something to say, redefining the art of entrepreneurship. Her story is one, like many American stories, especially in the Black community, of humble beginnings, and it's one of success and triumph and inspiration, and certainly, most importantly, empowerment. Colleen joins us now. And Colleen, it's a pleasure to have you on this program today. I'm honored to have you.
So Kelly, thank you. And it's an honor to be here and to be present and to be able to share our story with you. So thank you so much for the invite, and I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. You know, in your bio, it talks about the fact that you have a passion to expose the trade secrets to becoming a successful entrepreneur. Before we get into that, I want to focus on what's at hand right now. As you know, we're all grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. We also know that it's been a disruptor of our lives in every category, and it has disproportionately impacted African Americans and people of color throughout this country. On this program, we talked about that a week before the world started talking about it, from the president's lips and Dr. Anthony Fauci's lips, about the fact that coronavirus was disproportionately affecting the African American community. But you were on the front lines of this before we even heard about it becoming a pandemic. Tell us how you got involved in the early stages of addressing the issues and addressing the threat of COVID-19.
So part of what MCI Diagnostic Laboratories have been able to do in the several years is that we operate in the government space. And so we have a number of government entities that we care for their lives. And one of the contracts that we have is a Department of Labor, in which we care for about over 75 to 100,000 lives daily. We do all of the laboratory. We're in all 50 states nationally. So early on in conversations, it was our task given to us by the Department of Labor to ensure that we could protect and ensure that the kids and the people that are at the Department of Labor, the Job Corps, that we could make sure that they were tested. And we needed to have a solution as this country was unfolding into what is now probably, I'm not saying that it is the worst pandemic, but it is the worst of my lifetime and a lot of our lifetime. So that is the way that we first got introduced to what we needed to do and how we needed to work in terms of protecting the lives that we care for.
Now, you started doing that in December of 2019, is that correct?
We started hearing about it. It wasn't until January that we were in the full-fledged of trying to identify a solution and a process for the lives that we care for.
And as that process went on and you began to see that it was looming larger than just an epidemic taking place in the Wuhan province of China, but spreading globally and coming to our shores here in the United States, starting, of course, there in Kirkland, Washington. I remember the devastating impact on that senior citizen home, and then snaking its way all the way throughout the United States, hitting New York, which became, for the most part, the epicenter of the early development of this pandemic. When were your services enlisted by the work of the coronavirus task force there at the White House?
So early on, when this country in the laboratory space realized that we were going into a pandemic, all of a sudden, all of the equipment started to be monetized, and the government was commandeering most of the equipment. So I have a very significant partner that has been with me on my journey, being in the laboratory space, which was Abbott. We had, prior to this, we had purchased, ordered a number of pieces of equipment. We would get the equipment and they would say, it's not coming. It's on a boat, it's not coming. You can't have it, it's being earmarked for someone else. And so, I mean, we've had some interesting conversations. And so finally, Abbott Laboratories, who is a very, very strategic partner for me, came back and said, you know what, we've been on this journey with you. We stay on this journey with you, and we're gonna make it to where you have the equipment. And so as fast as one piece of equipment was being off the assembly line, it was already given. It was already predestined for someone. So Abbott Laboratories came back and they said, we believe that MCI, for the lives that you have in the government contracting space that you hold as the only small business to do this, we're not only giving you one Abbott M2000, but we're going to provide you with two. So that is when, things kind of changed for us. And so even that was kind of a touch and go. We'd have the equipment, it was being delivered, rapidly, and then someone would commandeer it. So finally, it stabilized and our equipment came. We've got our equipment around the 1st of March. And so the pandemic and the testing didn't really start until people were testing. We weren't testing very good in this country because the kits were not out. There were no reagents. So I was on the front of testing right around March 17th. And that's when most people were testing. So we kind of got inundated right around March 17th. Our equipment was delivered and it was validated and ready for use, I think about the 23rd of March. So just at the beginning stages, days where people could actually physically test at any level.
I'd like to talk to you, stay with me when we come back from the break. I want to talk to you about the testing that's going on and the efficacy of it, because as you know, some people are questioning the testing. They politicize testing just like they've politicized masks. So I'd like to talk to you about that and why that is so vital that we do get the testing and how it helps us deal with this COVID-19 pandemic head on. I'm talking to Colleen J. Payne Neighbors. We'll be back with more of the program right after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to my guest, Colleen J. Payne Neighbors, And what an incredible story about how she is the only African-American owned business that is actually involved in this COVID-19 pandemic as it relates to the vital and critical testing that is so necessary to conduct, so we have an understanding of how this is testing positive or whether we're testing negative. Colleen, let me ask you, a lot of people have politicized this coronavirus pandemic that's sweeping across the country, and we still continue to see that it's rising. Dr. Anthony Fauci stating that we're knee deep in it. Dr. Deborah Birx also talking about wear your mask, and we've got to get testing. I asked her there at the White House, at the Executive Office building, how do we get the testing to the African-American community? She said it's a priority. And here you are, you're actually physically engaged and doing that as part of the coronavirus task force. But there are people questioning the testing. Why?
You know, so because African Americans historically are disproportionate in believing that the government sometimes do an injustice or an inservice to us, but unfortunately at this moment, they're not. I think that it's just a distrust of the government because what we've heard and the lives that we've led with not trusting the government. But in this situation, in this moment, and in this time, this is a pandemic, and this virus has no color, it has no creed, it has no name, and it affects everyone. So we're not testing you. And I've been on the ground in many locations, in Atlanta, I've been in Houston, I've been in North Carolina, South Carolina. So the comments are always the same. Are you giving us something? But the trust is, because I'm African American, if I give to you, I give to me. I do no harm in the community in which I'm born and raised. So I hear the same questions. The only difference is, as an African American laboratory, I'm able to say, this is for your life. This is a life of the loved ones that you have. This is for grandma, grandpa. This is for the uncle that has high blood pressure and diabetes. So then we're a little bit more trusting, because sometimes, unfortunately, some of the information that is gotten out, it's not true. And it's a lot of information that people have to dissimulate in one location and one place. And so we've been sitting in our homes trying to single-handedly take all of the media news, all of the things that are coming out of the White House, and we're trying to put those together. And we're looking at social media where one person's experience, it may not be yours. So the key is, as an African-American laboratory, we're able to say, we look like you, we breathe like you, we breathe like the rest of the world. We do no harm in this season. We're here to save you, we're here to save grandma, and we're here to save Uncle Charlie. So I think every location that we're at, that is the number one question, is that, is this safe? Am I going to get my results? Is this going to give me something?
Short term or long term, we have a responsibility to each other to help each other and save each other. I'm talking to Colleen J. Payne Neighbors. When we come back, I want to talk to her not only about her response to coronavirus, but now I want to actually go to another topic and how she has become this successful entrepreneur and the example that she gives all of us through her powerful, inspiring book, I Did It My Way. We'll come back right after this. Welcome back to the program. So I hope all of you are really getting and understanding Colleen J. Payne Neighbors, because she's a woman who has a passion for what she does, and she has a passion for helping people all across the board, black, white, yellow, brown, whatever God's children they are. She loves them all and she's helping them all. And she's doing it from the standpoint of being a businesswoman, but also a woman who understands that she has an obligation and a duty to this country. And she is serving on the coronavirus task force for the White House. works very closely with Dr. Deborah Burks, who's the head of that, the coordinator of that. And she joins me now on this program. And I'm actually enjoying the conversation because of the intellect and the information that she's putting out that's vital for all people to understand, not just Black people, all people. But there's another side to you, Colleen, and that's your entrepreneurial side. And it's wonderful to see how your entrepreneurial side has not mitigated your patriotic side to help your country at a time of need. And you've been called to service and you're doing it well. You are also the author of a book called I Did It My Way, and it worked. I like that title. So tell me what it is that you have been able to accomplish, rags to riches, and how you pass that on to other people of color so that they can aspire for the same things that you've accomplished and know that it can be done.
You know, so one, many years ago when I wrote the book, we had so many issues with the title because the publishers wanted me to change the title. They thought that it was just a little bit over the top in terms of I did it my way and it worked. But you know what? I stayed with that because unfortunately I'm in the Midwest. Today, we didn't have mentors like what you see now. I didn't know anyone that had made $1 million. I didn't know how to do business. I just knew I had the passion to do it. By profession, I'm a nuclear medicine technologist, and I started with this van. So I did it my way, and it worked. I didn't say that I did everything 100% well, but you know what? 24 years later, I'm still standing, and I did it my way, and it worked. And so that means that unorthodox, some things that I shouldn't have done, should have done. But you know what? I've gone through it all, Kelly. I've seen it all. I am not afraid because what I came to the table with is what I still am today. So, you know, 25 years ago, back then I made $40,000, $50,000 a year. And I always knew that failure wasn't an option for me. When I started this company, my son was 6 months old and it was just he and I. The highest thing that I had going is my truck payment was $694 a month. And I jumped off and bought I had a truck built for $1 million and that payment was $10,000 a month. And I never looked like most entrepreneurs looked, like what if? There was never a what if. Failure was never an option. And so, and I still live by that rule today. So that means that I'm not afraid. Entrepreneurs have to not be afraid. And I've started many companies, and they've all been successful. They've all made millions of, over $1 million. They've not all been this company successful, but you know what we're embarking on now. I like niche companies, and I've been fortunate enough to do that in my lifetime. So what I've done, some entrepreneurs will say, well, because you did it, it can't be done. No. If I did it, it can be done. My mom was a housekeeper, and I have 8 siblings. And so I didn't come from the stock of, I knew what this looked like, but writing the book, it allowed me to know that the first entrepreneur that I ever knew, because I always thought that I didn't know one. The first entrepreneur that I knew was my mom. My mom sold Avon out of the back of her trunk. She sold Tupperware. She sold Watkins, anything that she could sell for the 8 kids. And so writing the book, sometimes a book is a revelation of our life. And just writing the book, I realized that the first entrepreneur that I knew, it was that lady selling Tupperware and Watkins and everything out of the back of her car. But I would tell you that because I did it, anyone can do it. Because I would tell you this one story. Just shortly before my mom passed, I wanted to have a conversation with her. My mom cleaned houses, and that's what she did. And I have 3 sisters, and they all went with her. And when it was my time, it was a rite of passage, sort of like in the Black community. If your parents are entrepreneurs, they take the kids, and you learn whatever it is. So you know what? When it got to me, Kelly, the one thing that I never understood, and I in the summer, one summer, would go with my mom to clean the houses. And you know what? My mom never took me more than a month. And I never understood that. And so, but it always was a dying question for me. So end result was I had that conversation with my mom, and I asked her, why didn't she make me clean everybody else's house or clean, non-African Americans' homes? And she said, I saw it. It wasn't for you, and you couldn't do it. And I think had she didn't see that in me, it would have changed the trajectory of who I was. So I believe that anyone, passion, persistence, and perseverance is what I live my life by, which are the 3 Ps. If you have that, that allows you to become whoever it is that you want, and no one can ever tell you that you can't.
You're watching The Kelly Wright Show. We're coming back with more after this. Just last week, I was talking about opportunity is knocking. Even in the midst of this crisis, opportunity is knocking on the door of Black Americans, especially those who have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm delighted you said that. And one last word, encourage them to get forward, how to go forward. How do they do that? What do they check on? And I know they've got to go up against it, but the opportunity is there.
So are we referring to like government contracting?
Yes, absolutely.
So, oh my God. I could say so much, but I want to make sure that I say the right thing and give you the right information. So we as any people of color, the opportunities are so there. The government buys my husband says this thing, the government buys anywhere from toilet paper to torpedoes every single day. But we're not at that table. The contracts that they would like to give us are the 10,000, the 50,000. I'm not interested. I am so not interested in you talking to me about a contract of that. That's a great number. But at the end of the day, why don't I get the $50 million contract? Why don't we get the $50 million contract? So it's some basic 101s. I think that I've given this opportunity to over 200 people, and none of us have taken me up on it. I have a blueprint as to how you get into government contracting, because when I got here, it's 10 things that you do. You go to SAMS, you set up an account, you register, you become a DBE. Then from there, you become a hub zone. So it's really not that complicated. But you have to start someplace in order to have that conversation. And they make it look so daunting for us, but it is not. Because anything that you're doing, the government is buying. And do they fight us? Absolutely. But in this new season, what does that fight look like when you're in the right? That's what we go off of. What does that fight look like when you're in the right? Because sometimes it's not always the people that's not giving us the contract. It's sometimes it's people that look like us. So, but government contract, I would tell anyone, I know and I recognize that I am so here to talk about COVID testing and coronavirus, but I would say that from an entrepreneur part of me, that piece of me says, if you do anything with your life, invest, put your time in, understand that the government is our government as well. And they are serving and they are providing a change of a lifetime for most people. You just got to do the work. And it's not that hard.
Colleen, thank you for that. I think a lot of people will benefit from that. And don't be surprised if people start reaching out to you, say, hey, how do we do this? How do we become like you?
Well, Kelly, whenever you should like to teach a class, I will be the first, because I've already written the blueprint, because I think that it is my point to share what I've learned. And it's not that difficult. You bring a laptop, I'm going to take you through SAMS, I'm going to take you through the SBA. I will show, because I think it's just an important part of what we need to do.
And you're one of them. You're one of those incredible people. And Colleen J. Payne Neighbors, I can't thank you enough. And proof of what you've been able to accomplish is right there as we're talking to you. Just a few of your most notable awards and acknowledgments range from being listed in Wealth Choice, 1,000 of the wealthiest African Americans, Inc., 5,000, one of the fastest growing companies in the country, Black Enterprise, Business Innovator of the Year, fifth fastest growing company in Oklahoma, and that might have changed now. You might be right there at the top, but more importantly, you're at the top of the list in terms of getting educated about how we move forward. Thank you so much for this. I like to call it empowerment zone now, because that's what you've done. You've presented the opportunity, you've presented the education about testing, and you've certainly presented the empowerment factors that we so need to hear. So thank you for bringing it. You're always on your A game. Colleen, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you.
What a wonderful conversation I've had with Colleen J. Payne. Neighbors, make sure you stay in touch with this show. Contact her. Be sure to follow her and support all of her efforts, as well as learn from her. And we'll be back with more of the program after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm joined now for Strengthening the Family. I'm joined with George and Tondra Gregory, who have a wonderful organization called Journey for Life. And of course, they're life coaches and marriage coaches and relationship coaches. They really know how to strengthen the family. Hashtag make our family strong. And of course, they're also chaplains for the NFL, the Los Angeles Chargers. There won't be any name change with that. Like the
no changes with that.
I digress. But really, what we're going through right now, you know, I keep seeing so many people hurt and wounded by racism, by politics, by anger, by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, you know, people are losing their lives still, and there's grieving. So when we come down to the family, how do we help our families heal from the hurt that's inflicted upon each other from the outside forces as well as the internal forces about what's going on in the home? Because we're all under some sort of stress and anxiety right now because of all this stuff that we're challenged by.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And it's a lot. 2020 has just really taken us on a curveball, right? And so first things we have to do is just acknowledge that there are hurts and pains and there are disappointments that we're experiencing, not to just look away and try to just press through without acknowledging it, right? So we have to be watchful over the seeds, because those things produce seeds, and we have to be watchful of what we allow to germinate or take root in our life and in our relationships. So God sows seeds, and his seeds are to produce life and growth and prosperity, and you know, we're supposed to be better, right? So we want God's fruit. We want his seeds to take root and germinate in our lives.
Yeah, but just as our creator, right? God sows good seeds. There's also someone else who sows seeds in our life. And many times what we call this on the road when we go and talk all across the country, we call this Lucifer and the triple P. Lucifer meaning the enemy of our soul. He does not want us to have the seeds that God sows, right? And so he's going to sow discord through people, problems, and pain. That's the triple P. People,
say that again. People,
problems, and pain.
Wow.
Because we're
certainly experiencing that in our world right now.
That's right. Because we're human, people, problems, and pain will sow negative seeds in our lives. And when those negative seeds are sown, we've gotta know how to get back on course. We've got to know how to get back on course.
And one of the things, you know, these seeds can also produce something in our lives, right? Like God's seeds are to produce life and growth and prosperity, but these also produce seeds in our lives. I remember having to deal with some seeds that were germinating in my personal life because of my abandonment of my father. I just had a lot of seeds of mistrust and disrespect towards men, and those seeds affected my relationship with George. Now, I allowed those seeds to grow, and I believed those seeds, and it hindered the growth and the life that God wanted to produce in our relationship. So that's how powerful these seeds are. But we've got to be willing to uproot those things and take them out. And so how we do that is it's a whole plethora of things, of practical things that you can do. But this is a short segment, and what we wanted to at least.
I want to hold you over so we can actually talk about those specific things that we have to do. And you know what I like about you guys? You're unapologetically you, and you're unapologetic about your faith. And I think that's cool. I think it's great because one of the most underreported subject matters in the world today, and one that needs to be addressed, is faith. Regardless of who you believe and what you believe, faith is the substance of things hoped for. And if we're hoping to make our nation better and stronger, it starts in the home. So stay with me, George and Tandra, because when we come back from the break, I want you to talk about those practical steps that we can take to apply to our lives in our homes to help heal the hurt and the brokenness that we have in our homes, so that perhaps we can plant some seeds of greatness there and thereby spread those seeds of greatness throughout our Black and brown and red and yellow and white communities. Back with more of George and Tandra Gregory after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking about strengthening the family, hashtag family strong. And then the reason why I like doing that is because we need to strengthen our families. Our families are being bombarded, especially in the Black and the brown communities, those communities that are underserved and forgotten and marginalized because of racism, because of prejudice, because of bigotry, because of just crap that happens. That's the best way I can put it, because it need not be there to destroy us. And yet there is a systemic evil that brings us down. So I want to talk to George and Tandra. We've been talking about what happens when a family is hurt and broken. And Tandra, before we went to the break, you were talking about practical steps that we can take to safeguard our families, help our families get through hurt that might have been there for generations. You were pointing out your father abandoning you. That could be a generational thing that goes on, and certainly it has in many of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We unfortunately, life, although we were created by God, sometimes life is not fair, right? It brings these people problems and pain in, and we have to deal with them. So one practical step is to actually deal with it. And we call that, you got to be willing to uproot those seeds, because if you allow them to germinate, they're going to choke out God's best for you. They're going to choke out your happiness. They're going to choke out your outlook. And here's what I mean by that. Basically, I'm using language of mental health. When our mental health, when we let people problems and pain overshadow our mental health, we become depressed and have anxiety, and that affects every relationship.
Yes. And so that's one of the practical things that I would recommend as a mental health professional, is to get help. Like, I know in our community, we just try to push through or push down. That's how I was coping with my abandonment. I was totally in denial that it impacted me, and I just kept through. But once I was able to get that counseling, and once I was able to figure out the connection between that disappointment and that hurt and that pain, then I was empowered to make different choices, to say, these are the seeds that I want to let go. I want to forgive. I don't want to hold on to hatred. I don't want to hold on to anger. I began to uproot those things. And through my relationship with God, I began to plant in his seeds, which were life, his fruits of the Spirit, his forgiveness, his, joy, his peace, his patience, his love and acceptance of who I was, began to really transform my life personally, which it led to us having a transformed relationship.
This is why it's important that I feel that we launch Strengthening the Family, because the family has been bombarded through COVID-19. The family was bombarded before COVID-19, and the Black family has been so put upon with so many burdens that it's important to have a couple like you to show, one, that there are strong Black families who can endure and persevere and overcome through faith, and then being able to sit down face to face and talk to each other. And that is not an easy task. Trust me. It's not an easy task,
That's right.
especially when there's hurt from outside influences or wrongful decisions, or just the pain of living in this current age that we find ourselves living in, where the news cycle is always negative. So thank you for bringing a breath of fresh air and a healing balm, if you will, that we can just take a moment to hear what you say, and hopefully we understand what you're saying, and then we can go out and implement that plan of attack on those hurtful issues that confront us and find healing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kelly, we always love being with you. In our modern society where we know Black lives matter, as far as Journey for Life, we equally say strong families matter. Make sure you're strengthening your family just as much as you're raising a banner for whatever your cause is.
Well said, my brother and my sister. I love this couple. George and Tandra Gregory, God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless.
God bless you.
We'll see you
Bye-bye.
Wednesday. All right. Bye-bye.
Amen.
Welcome back to the program. And now for my final word. At the top of the hour, I talked about perseverance. And we've talked about how perseverance can turn into success in every category of life. Be tenacious, be persistent, be faithful, hopeful, and above all, never give up. Hopefully, we've been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Just wait. It's coming on. The love train. Just give it time. Give it time. Get on board. That means you and you and you. Get on board.
All creeds and colors,
Brothers
all sisters and
and
brothers
sisters.
on the love train.
Get on board the love train. Everyone's invited. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, my sisters and brothers, get on board on the love train. Woo-hoo! Yeah, it's all right. Just give it time. Keep on marching on. Keep on being strong. Get on board the love train. Love train. Let's spread some love. Love, 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 love. Oh, on the love train, y'all. Hey.